Our unit, to put it plainly, consists of people who nail down mountains and rivers. The three words, hydroelectric power station, sound grand, but in reality it's just throwing a bunch of us grown men into the most primitive, deep mountains and old forests, using rebar and concrete to choke a river's throat. The places we work might just be a tiny dot on a map, or perhaps not even a dot at all. In such places, forget about humans, even living creatures might not pass by for decades. That's why the stories from here, outsiders wouldn't understand or believe. In the third month of the project, Old Ma disappeared. Old Ma was a worker. He was in his 50s, a man of few words, but extremely skilled. His work was incredibly solid. The spillway he built was even smoother than if it had been machine-poured. That day, after work, they did a roll call in the mess hall. One person was missing. Old Zhang checked each bunk, and Old Ma's bed was empty. His blanket was neatly folded, like a block of tofu. No one thought much of it. Cell service was bad in the mountains. He probably went to some hilltop to find a signal, to call home, or maybe he had diarrhea and was hiding in some corner, dealing with such things, which happens often. The next morning, Old Ma still hadn't returned. Old Zhang's expression darkened a little. He organized a group of people, starting from the work camp, and began searching outwards. At a hydroelectric power station construction site, there were too many dangerous places. Bottomless foundation pits, rushing diversion tunnels, and mountain walls blasted open by explosives, where rocks could fall at any moment. What we feared most was someone falling into the concrete being poured. Then they would truly become part of the project, immortalized forever. We searched for a whole day, but found nothing. On the third day, the search area XB our unit, to put it plainly, dead to the entire reservoir zone. On the third day, the search area expanded to the entire reservoir zone. That area would eventually hold hundreds of meters of water, but for now it was still a vast river valley. Inside were dense forests, swamps, and abandoned villages. We called out Old Ma's name. The sound bounced around in the empty valley, sounding particularly eerie. There was nothing but echoes. By the seventh day, everyone had lost hope. Old Zhang had already reported him missing. The police also sent 2 police dogs. But those 2 majestic German shepherds, after circling the barracks a few times, tucked their tails between their legs and absolutely refused to go any further. They let out mournful whimpers from their throats, as if they had seen something utterly terrifying. That's when things started to feel wrong. There was a man on the construction site named Master Huang, who was in charge of guarding the explosives depot. He wasn't a formal employee of our engineering bureau. He was a consultant hired locally. He was over 60, thin as a bamboo pole. He squinted all day, and rarely spoke. That evening, he found Old Zhang, carrying a bottle of ergotu. He didn't enter the room, just stood at the doorway. He pointed underneath our barracks. We were all living in temporary prefabricated cabins, raised on foundations of stone and cement underneath. There were some gaps left for ventilation. The largest gap was just big enough for a thin person to crawl through. He said, "The person is right underneath." Of course, Old Zhang didn't believe him. We had shined flashlights down there countless times. Besides some snakes, insects, rodents, and mosquitoes, there was nothing. Master Huang didn't explain further. He turned and went back to his small cabin. A moment later, he came out carrying a bronze gong. That gong was about the size of a washbasin. Its color was a dull, dark bronze, covered in rust and handprints. He walked to the highest large rock in the construction area. That was where we gathered for morning briefings before starting work each day. He stood firm, took a deep breath, then struck it hard. With a dang sound, that gong sound was very strange. It wasn't crisp, nor loud, but exceptionally deep. It was like a giant rock plunging into deep water. The sound traveled along the ground, making our hearts tingle. Immediately after, he began to strike the gong, while calling out Old Ma's name in a very peculiar tune. The tune was neither high nor low, neither fast nor slow, drifting through the valley. It didn't sound like he was calling a person. It sounded more like he was calling back a soul. Old Zhang's face turned green with fear. He wanted to go up and stop him, but it was as if he was nailed to the spot by something. All of us stood there, watching that thin, small figure on the rock. No one dared to make a sound. After about 10 minutes of drumming, Master Huang stopped. He pointed to the largest crack in the stone foundation beneath our barracks. We all held our breath. A hand, covered in black mud and grass clippings, reached out from that stone crack. Then came a head, then shoulders. It was Old Ma. It really was Old Ma. From that stone crack we had inspected countless times. He squeezed out little by little like a maggot. He squeezed out little by little. He was so filthy he was unrecognizable as a human being. His hair was full of rotten leaves. His mouth was stuffed with something, bulging. Black liquid dripped down from the corners of his mouth. His eyes were open, but unfocused. He stared blankly ahead, as if we were all just air. We all pitched in to pull him out. An indescribable stench assailed us. It wasn't the smell of a corpse, nor just plain dirtiness. It was a pungent odor mixed with decay, fermentation, and earth. We dug out the stuff from his mouth. It was a large, dark, lumpy mass. Someone with sharp eyes made it out clearly. It was cow dung mixed with earthworms and beetles. We carried old Ma back to the dormitory. After forcing several bowls of salt water down him, and him vomiting for a good while, he slowly came to. The first thing he said upon waking was, "Where's the food? Where's my food? Such a huge table of dishes. How did it disappear?" He said. 7 days ago he went to the restroom in the evening. When he came back, he saw a person standing behind the barracks. That person was dressed very respectably, and smiled, saying to him, "I know the food at your construction site isn't good. I specially prepared a feast at my home, and invite you over for a good meal." Old Ma said he didn't know what was going on at the time, but he was compelled by some strange impulse and followed him. That person led him for a distance, into a very grand courtyard. The courtyard was festively decorated with lanterns and colorful streamers, with over a dozen immortal tables set up. The tables were laden with mountain and sea delicacies, steaming hot. Many people were eating and warmly invited him to join them. He said he ate there for 7 days and 7 nights. It was the best food he had ever eaten in his life. He said the people there also told him that after he finished eating, they would take him to see his new house. He would live there from then on. He wouldn't have to return to these deep mountains and old forests to suffer anymore. Our hair stood on end as we listened. Our construction site was in an uninhabited area for dozens of miles around. Where would a grand courtyard come from? Where would a lavish feast come from? Later, Master Huang told us, Old Ma had been invited by the mountain spirit to a banquet. He said that in these mountains too many people had drowned, starved, or died of illness in the past. There were too many lost souls. Their accumulated resentment had formed into a kind of entity. This entity had no physical form, but could affect people's minds. Whatever you desired most in your heart, it would conjure up for you. Old Ma had toiled his entire life. His greatest wish was to eat a good meal. So what he saw was a lavish feast. And that gong sound was a specific sound wave, capable of bringing a person's soul back from a hallucination. As for the cow dung, that was a mountain delicacy in the eyes of the lost souls. It was used to entertain honored guests. If it had been a few days later, once Old Ma had lost his soul through eating, he would truly have become one of their family, and remained there forever. After this incident, the atmosphere on the construction site became very oppressive. Although Old Ma was rescued, he was completely broken. He was emaciated beyond recognition. His eyes were also timid and fearful. Not long after, he was sent home. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. About half a month after Old Ma left, strange phenomena began to appear on the construction site. First, there was the food in the mess hall. Even though the pork was fresh, when cooked it had an earthy, raw smell. The freshly steamed rice always felt like it had sand mixed in when eaten. We all thought it was a problem with the procurement or the cooks. We changed personnel several times, but the situation remained the same. Next, there was the water. The water we used came from a mountain spring, clear and sweet. But during that period, the water coming out of the taps always carried a faint, almost imperceptible rusty smell. And after boiling, a thin layer would float on the surface of the water, like grease. The most bizarre thing was, many people started hearing sounds at night. It was a chewing sound, very loud and greedy. It was like someone gnawing on bones under your bed. But when you turned on the light, you couldn't see anything. Panic spread like a plague. Old Zhang tried everything. He invited so-called experts to test the water quality and food. The results showed everything was normal. He even secretly invited monks and Taoist priests to perform rituals. But it had no effect. Instead, the feeling of being watched grew more and more unsettling. I started to suffer from insomnia. Every night I could hear that chewing sound, and I discovered a pattern. Whenever the sound began, outside my dorm window, on the dark hillside facing the reservoir, a faint red light would appear. It would flicker, like someone smoking. I plucked up the courage to check a few times. There was nothing there, until one day I noticed something. We had several dogs at the construction site, kept to guard the place. They were usually very fierce. But during that period, these dogs would become listless at night. They all huddled in corners, trembling. They didn't even dare to bark. And they stopped eating dog food. I personally saw a large wolf dog, secretly gnawing on a rock. Its mouth was covered in blood from chewing. Yet its eyes showed immense satisfaction. I told Master Huang about this. He listened and remained silent for a long time. He only said one thing. He's no longer satisfied. He started inviting all of us to eat. Master Huang said, once the mountain god's feast begins, it won't end easily. Old Ma was just the beginning. He now considers the entire construction site his courtyard. All of us are guests on his invitation list. The strange taste in the food and water is the invitation. Once you get used to it, or rather accept this taste, you won't be able to leave this place. You'll start to find everything outside bland and uninteresting. Only the things here will taste truly delicious. Eventually, you'll be like that dog, starting to eat things that we don't consider food. I asked him what we should do. He shook his head and said, his gong can only awaken someone whose soul hasn't strayed too far. In the current situation, it's as if the grievances of the entire mountain have been stirred up. He has no solution. The only way is for the project to end as soon as possible, and for us to leave quickly. But the project had no end in sight. Just as we were about to be driven mad by this invisible fear, a turning point appeared. Because the dam required a second round of blasting, the water level needed to be lowered. With the roar of the water pumps, the reservoir's water level dropped day by day. Some submerged objects began to re-emerge from the water. One day, a technician responsible for monitoring the water level saw something through his telescope. In the very center of the reservoir, as the water level receded, a black spire emerged. It was the roof of an ancient building. Everyone rushed to see it. It was indeed a roof. Dark greenish-black tiles, with upturned eaves. Although it had been submerged for a long time, its former exquisite craftsmanship was still evident. According to the blueprints and local county records, that place was once a Grand Dragon King temple. Back then, to rush the construction schedule, the temple was neither demolished nor relocated. Instead, it was directly submerged underwater along with the entire village. When Master Huang saw the temple roof, his face went ashen. He said, we were wrong. We've been wrong all along. That thing isn't some mountain god. It's the Dragon King of this river. We blocked his throat and flooded his home. Now he wants to invite all of us guests down to accompany him. He said, the roof of the Dragon King temple is the temple's spiritual crown, the place where spiritual energy converges. Now that it's exposed, it's like someone opening their eyes. He has seen us. Sure enough, starting from the night the temple roof emerged, the strange occurrences escalated. People at the construction site began to sleepwalk. In the middle of the night, several people would get up on their own, get dressed neatly, and walk in a line towards the reservoir. If the night watchman hadn't discovered them early, they might have truly walked into the water. And the chewing sound grew even louder. It no longer sounded like gnawing on bones, but like many people eating at the same time. The sound of smacking lips, the clatter of bowls and chopsticks, and even people loudly shouting out, drinking game calls. It was incredibly lively, but we were all clearly in our own beds, terrified with blankets pulled over our heads. Old Zhang was on the verge of a breakdown. The project couldn't stop, but people were almost beyond saving. In the end, he could only take desperate measures. He went to beg Master Huang. Master Huang made 3 demands. First, he needed the 3 sacrifices. Not ordinary pigs, oxen, or goats, but black pigs, yellow oxen, and white goats. They couldn't have a single stray hair of a different color. Second, he needed the fingertip blood of a virgin boy. Surprisingly, there were no virgin boys at the construction site. Master Huang said, then find someone with the purest yang energy in their 8 characters, and the strongest fate. Use his blood as a substitute. Third, and most crucial, he needed to enter the Dragon King temple that had emerged from the water. He needed to perform a ritual inside the temple, to send the Dragon King away. For the first 2 conditions, Old Zhang spent a fortune. He gathered people with pure yang energy in their 8 characters from hundreds of miles away. In the end, after all the calculations, it turned out to be me. I was just over 20 at the time, young and impetuous. I didn't think too much and agreed. The third condition, the hardest, was to reach the temple roof in the center of the reservoir. We could only get there by boat. Moreover, the underwater conditions were complex and extremely dangerous. Master Huang specifically asked me to row the boat for him. He said, my fate is strong, and I can withstand the things underwater. The day we set off, the sky was heavily overcast. The water surface was like a massive slab of dark iron. We used a small speedboat, carrying Master Huang and various ritualistic items. We slowly approached the temple roof. The closer we got, the stronger the fishy smell in the water became. I could see huge dark shadows moving underwater. but they were definitely not fish. The speedboat docked against the temple roof's upturned eaves. Master Huang told me to stay on the boat. He himself, like an ape, climbed onto the ridge of the roof in a few movements. In the very center of the roof ridge, there was a broken hole. It must have been caused by years of water erosion. He descended through that hole. I was left alone on the boat. All around was a deathly silence. I could hear my own heartbeat. Minute by minute, time passed. There was no sound from inside the temple. Just as I was about to lose patience and call out to him, a gong suddenly sounded from inside the temple. It was the same sound that had woken up old Ma that night, dull and oppressive. But this time, the sound came from underwater. It vibrated directly through the bottom of the boat, into my bones. Immediately after, something even more terrifying happened. I saw the water surface around me begin to bubble up with dense, countless bubbles. It was like water boiling in a pot. Some dark, murky things floated up from the bottom of the water. They were human hairs. Countless strands of hair, tangled and intertwined, floated on the water like clumps of seaweed. Then, pale, swollen faces, one by one, tilted upwards from the clumps of hair. Their eyes were hollow, staring blankly at me. I was scared out of my wits. I started the speedboat wanting to flee, but just then, a cold hand reached out from the water and grabbed my ankle. The hand had no skin, only a layer of slimy moss. His fingernails were black and long. I kicked and struggled desperately, but I couldn't break free. Just as I was about to be dragged underwater, a second gong sounded from inside the temple. This gong was much louder than before. With the sound of the gong, the hand that was grabbing my ankle, as if electrocuted, suddenly let go. The faces and hair that had floated to the surface also instantly sank. The water surface returned to calm, as if everything that had just happened was merely an illusion. After an unknown period, Master Huang climbed out of the broken hole. He was soaked to the bone, and his face was paler than a corpse in the water. In his hand, he tightly clutched the bronze gong. The first thing he did was put his index finger to his lips, signaling me to be silent. We returned to shore in silence. Once ashore, the first thing Master Huang did was to have me cut my fingertip with a knife and drip the blood into a small porcelain bowl. Then, he used that blood to draw a strange symbol on the forehead of each of the 3 sacrifices. After doing all this, he pushed the 3 sacrifices into the water. He then threw all the various ritualistic tools, along with the bronze gong, into the center of the reservoir. After he finished all of this, he looked as if all the energy had been drained from him. He slumped to the ground. I asked him what was truly down there. He looked at the water surface. It was a long time before he spoke. He said that temple was no longer a temple. It was a nest. For all these years, all the resentment and lost souls from beneath the water gathered there. They had already merged with that temple. He said that what he saw after going down was not the inside of the temple at all, but a massive banquet hall constructed from human bones and silt. Countless guests sat inside, enjoying their grand feast. Those so-called dishes were the vital essence of us living people. He said that the Dragon King was actually a core formed by the convergence of all these resentments. It had no fixed form. It could appear as whatever any of us desired most in our hearts. It entertained us with illusions, and the price we paid was our vitality and our lives. Master Huang said he used the sound of a gong to disperse the ordinary vengeful spirits. But that core, that Dragon King, he couldn't move it. He could only use the essence of 3 lives and a bit of my pure yang energy to make a deal. It was as if he was telling it, we offer sacrifices. We know we were wrong. We are just passing through for this project. Once it's done, we'll leave. Please don't disturb us again. After that ritual, the construction site indeed quieted down. The taste of food and water returned to normal. The chewing sounds at night also disappeared. The sleepwalkers never appeared again. It was as if everything had truly ended. A few months later, the dam was successfully closed. We began to evacuate in batches. The day I left, I looked back at the massive concrete dam. It was like a gray scar, spanning between the green mountains and clear waters. The reservoir's surface was smooth as a mirror, reflecting the blue sky and white clouds. No abnormalities were visible. Master Huang didn't leave with us. He said he was born here, and would die here too. He wanted to stay and watch over that thing. I've told this story to many people. They all treated it as a ghost story circulating on the construction site. But I knew it was real, because ever since that day I returned from the Dragon King Temple, I developed a strange illness. Everything I ate tasted bland and flavorless, like chewing wax. Only one thing was an exception. Sometimes I would avoid everyone, secretly running to the rural field paths, or into the cattle sheds at the dairy farm. I would grab a handful of grass roots mixed with soil, or a piece of still warm cow dung, and put it in my mouth. Only at that time could I taste that flavor again. That taste which in the illusion, both old Ma and I had tasted, an unparalleled delicacy. I knew that my banquet had actually never ended. I had merely been moved from the main table to a scattered seat away from it, and that true host, it was still in that underwater temple, beneath that calm water surface, patiently waiting for the next batch of new guests drawn in by its invitation.